as far as like philosophy is concerned, like I try to, I'm not like a philosopher per se, and I find it can get a little pedantic with like people fixating on certain definitions. And I'm more trying to figure out like what what model and framework is someone using when they use a word, what do they mean by it, and then how can I drill down to what the actual point of contention is and what are their reasons for arriving at it. And 9 times out of 10, their reasons for arriving at their position are completely unrelated to reason or observation. They're more just like, well, if this wasn't the case, the world would be scary, alien, and bad things would
Mm,
happen, is usually their argument.
mm,
Like my most recent philosophical topic that I've been trying to like, find interlocutors for in the unbelievable group is nominalism versus realism. Like, our words, do our definitions like true facts in the world, or are they just things we make up? Is everything just names all the way down? Like, does the emperor really have no clothes? And there's a lot of people where they're like, well, of course, a equals a, and a thing is a thing, how could it not be not a thing? And I'm like, well, but we have to distinguish between our conversations about something and the
Yes, yes.
object
Why
in and
do
of
they
itself.
do that? I mean, language is entirely fabricated.
Well, because those have very strong implications for things like the trans debate and the abortion debate.
Yeah.
So
Mm,
when you talk to people about topics like trans, like what is a woman, and abortion, what is a person,
mm,
those all hinge on having this metaphysical ontology
mm,
where there's a
mm.
correct, hard and fast answer, almost a platonic form of what it means to be human or
Yeah.
what it means to be a woman.
Mm,
mm,
And
mm,
that they like to fixate on. Well, when I say woman, I really think about my stereotypical image I have in my head of what an adult human female, cis female really looks like, and
mm,
that what womanhood is that, and anything that departs from that is just not a woman, and you're just
mm,
delusional. Likewise, if they say what I think, what is a person, they think, well, I think a human with human DNA. Well, what's the bare minimum of that? It would be like an embryo that had its sperm and egg fused and their calcium signal event, and
mm,
that now this is a discrete human, and now because it's a human, it's entitled to human rights, and that's as far as they take it. And it's like, well, okay, but then how do you deal with things like the ship of Theseus or the
yes.
paradox of the heap? So the
Mm,
ship of Theseus, for those who don't know, is like, if you have the ship of Theseus is this artifact, and that as it was aging, they kept replacing planks, old planks with new planks,
mm,
until there's
mm,
not a single original plank. Is it
mm,
still the same ship? Now,
mm,
if it is, what happens if they took all the old planks and reassembled the ship again from the old planks? Which one would be the original ship? You
mm,
could say the same thing with bands or the paradox of the
mm.
heap. If you have like 1 grain, is it a heap? No. If you had 2 grains, is it a heap? No. So if you keep adding a grain, 1 grain isn't going to make it a heap, but eventually it's a heap. So what's the precise number of grains to make something a heap? And there's no answer to that. Or what's
Mm,
there's in a cloud and not a cloud? A cloud is just a increasing gradient of water until it hits a
mm,
threshold where
mm.
we can see it.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's not like a physical object where you could say this atom is in the cloud and
Mm,
this atom is not in the cloud.
yeah,
But
yeah.
they would say, yes, there is a cloud and there is a demarcation, but it exists in heaven and we can't find it, but it exists. And
I,
it's
I
like,
like the I like the way they try to distinguish between a mist and a fog.
yeah.
A,
So
a, a,
like I've been trying to engage with that particular debate where it's almost a form of objectivism, where what they want to do is they want to take the names that we give to things and the pictures we have for them in our head
mm,
and say that is the true form of the object, that is the true ontology, and that everything that you're seeing is just kind of a rough approximation of where it lies. We might not be able to find where it lies, but there is in fact some fact of the matter about where the true cloud is, or where the true human is, or where the true woman is. And that's sort of this right left distinction where some people are like, look, we live in a fuzzy, ambiguous world that we round up to functional categories, or we live in a world with hard functional categories that's just imperfect and we're just unable to see which category every time, but they're there.
mm.
Like, and then why do you think they're there? Well, if they weren't there, it'd be chaos and everything would be horrible. I'm like, well, that's not a reason to say that they're there. It's just saying that you don't like
No.
the idea of them
Mm.
not being there.
So
So
I blame Plato. I don't know whether he actually thought that thought is supreme over observations of the natural realm, or whether that's how generations following him have come to regard what his attitude was. But he set humanity back a big step. Whichever is responsible for that mentality, it's hampering the development of science in particular.
I mean, I obviously come from a bias towards empiricism and observation.
Yeah.
which
Mm.
only relies on the assumption that there's a mind independent reality, but it doesn't
Mm.
have to commit to whatever the nature of that reality is.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I don't know enough about Plato to say like whether I think he thinks forms are mental. I suspect that he thinks forms are just sort of out there in like this distant
Mm.
way. Aristotle thought forms existed within the object in and of itself.
Mm.
And then so there was other forms of philosophy that said like there isn't some like, perfectly shaped imprint of you that's up in heaven that like you are failing to adhere to. That imprint lives within your corpus and person,
Mm.
which is fine, but you're still positing this imaginary thing. You're taking the
Yeah.
object in our head
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah. Yeah.
superimposing it on
Yes.
the physical correlate that we're interacting with.
Which is
And
backwards. It's just backwards.
it does seem backwards, but I'm learning that there are people who have very strong emotional commitment to that idea
Mm.
because they seem
Mm.
utterly horrified by the idea
Yeah.
that there might not be anything there and these are just words we're making up and
Yeah.
images we're putting in our head.